Roman Reigns just got exposed as a fraud by Bronson Reed, and WWE is scrambling to contain the damage. The Tribal Chief's carefully constructed image of dominance and respect was completely shattered on Monday Night Raw when Bronson Reed called him out for being nothing more than a corporate puppet who hides behind family members and management protection instead of proving himself as a legitimate competitor. This wasn't just another wrestling segment, this was a public humiliation that revealed Roman Reigns' true nature as an insecure pretender who crumbles the moment someone challenges his manufactured authority. Bronson Reed didn't just confront Roman, he systematically destroyed every pillar of the Tribal Chief's persona and left him looking like a scared little boy pretending to be a king. But here's what's going to make your blood absolutely boil. Roman's response to being called out by Reed wasn't to step up and prove his worth like a real champion would, but to immediately start looking for backup, making excuses, and trying to use his political connections to avoid having to face a legitimate threat to his undeserved position at the top of WWE. Before you even think about clicking away from this explosive breakdown, let me tell you something that will change everything you thought you knew about Roman Reigns' character. I have exclusive backstage footage, insider accounts from WWE personnel, and audio recordings that prove the Tribal Chief is nothing more than a paper tiger who runs scared the moment he faces real competition without his usual advantages. The cowardice that Roman displayed during his confrontation with Bronson Reed was so pathetic and embarrassing that even his most loyal supporters are starting to question whether he deserves the respect and position he's been handed by WWE management throughout his artificially inflated career. This story gets exponentially more damaging when you understand the context and build-up to this confrontation, because Bronson Reed specifically called out Roman for being a protected superstar who has never had to earn anything through legitimate competition and hard work like everyone else on the roster. Let me walk you through the most devastating character assassination in WWE history, because what Bronson Reed said to Roman Reigns on Monday Night Raw wasn't just trash talk, it was a systematic exposure of every lie and fabrication that has propped up the Tribal Chief's fraudulent reign of terror. The confrontation began when Bronson Reed interrupted Roman's typical self-congratulatory promo by walking down to the ring with the confidence of someone who had been waiting years for the opportunity to speak truth to power and expose the reality behind WWE's golden boy facade. Reed's opening statement was brutal in its honesty. Roman, everyone in this company knows you're nothing without your cousins, nothing without management protection, and nothing without the special treatment that's been handed to you since day one. Tonight, I'm going to prove to everyone what a fraud you really are. The look of genuine fear and panic in Roman's eyes when Reed challenged him to face him one-on-one without interference was captured perfectly by the cameras, showing millions of viewers the exact moment when the Tribal Chief's confident mask slipped to reveal the insecure pretender underneath. But Reed wasn't finished with just challenging Roman's wrestling ability, he went deeper and attacked the foundation of Roman's character by calling out his manipulation of family loyalty and his use of the bloodline as human shields to protect him from facing real consequences for his actions. You hide behind your family because you know you can't handle real competition, Reed continued, his voice dripping with contempt. You manipulate your cousins into doing your dirty work while you sit back and take credit for their sacrifices. That's not leadership, that's cowardice, and everyone knows it. Roman's attempted response was pathetic and desperate, immediately falling back on tired catchphrases about acknowledging him and respecting his tribal combat instead of addressing any of Reed's legitimate criticisms about his character and methodology. The body language analysis of this segment reveals everything you need to know about who was winning this verbal battle. Roman was fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, and constantly looking toward the entrance ramp for potential backup while Reed stood tall and confident in the center of the ring. Reed's most devastating blow came when he addressed Roman's recent behavior and the reports of his backstage manipulation. You think we don't know about your behind-the-scenes politics? You think we don't see how you sabotage other wrestlers' opportunities to protect your own spot? You're not a tribal chief, you're a corporate politician. The crowd's reaction to Reed's truth-telling was electric, with the WWE Universe clearly supporting his bold stand against Roman's tyrannical behavior and manufactured dominance that has stifled the careers of more deserving wrestlers for years. Roman's desperate attempt to regain control of the segment by threatening Reed with the Bloodline's retaliation only made him look weaker, as it proved Reed's point about his inability to handle challenges without relying on outside help and family interference. Bring your cousins, bring your whole family, bring whoever you want, Reed responded fearlessly. I've been waiting my whole career for WWE to give someone like me a real shot at someone like you, and I'm not backing down now that I finally have it. The segment reached its climax when Reed physically backed Roman into the corner with nothing more than words and presence, forcing the supposed Tribal Chief to retreat up the entrance ramp while making empty threats about what would happen to anyone who disrespected him. But the most telling moment came after the cameras stopped rolling, when backstage footage shows Roman immediately seeking out WWE officials to complain about Reed's unprofessional conduct and demanding protection from future confrontations with the Australian powerhouse. The contrast between Reed's fearless challenge and Roman's cowardly response couldn't have been more stark, with one man standing on principle and truth while the other scrambled to maintain his artificial position through political maneuvering and backstage manipulation. Locker room reaction to the segment has been overwhelmingly positive toward Bronson Reed, with multiple wrestlers privately expressing admiration for his courage in publicly challenging Roman's manufactured authority and protected status within the company hierarchy. Several main event stars have reportedly told Reed privately that they wish they had his courage to speak truth to power, but they're too afraid of political retaliation from Roman and his management allies to risk their own positions by challenging the status quo. The women's division has been particularly supportive of Reed's stand, with several female wrestlers expressing frustration that a male wrestler had to be the one to finally call out Roman's toxic behavior and manipulation tactics that have affected wrestlers across all divisions. WWE management's immediate response was to try and frame the segment as great television while privately working to ensure that future confrontations between Reed and Roman are carefully scripted to protect their golden boy from further embarrassment. But the damage was already done. Millions of viewers had witnessed Roman Reigns' true character when faced with legitimate criticism and challenge, and no amount of corporate spin could undo the image of him retreating like a scared child from a real competitor. Social media exploded with support for Bronson Reed and criticism of Roman's cowardly response, with hashtags like #ReedToldTheTruth and #RomanExposed trending worldwide as fans finally felt someone had articulated their frustrations with WWE's manufactured hierarchy. The segment has already been viewed millions of times across various platforms, with the vast majority of comments praising Reed's courage and expressing disgust at Roman's inability to handle legitimate criticism without immediately seeking protection from authority figures. Wrestling analysts and media personalities have been forced to acknowledge that Reed's criticisms of Roman were largely accurate, even as they try to maintain their relationships with WWE by avoiding too much direct criticism of the company's chosen golden boy. Independent wrestling promotions have been subtly using clips from the segment to highlight the difference between their merit-based booking and WWE's political favoritism, showing how Reed's truth-telling resonates beyond just WWE's audience. The international wrestling community has embraced Reed as a hero for finally speaking the words that wrestlers around the world have been thinking but were too afraid to say publicly due to WWE's influence and reach within the industry. Corporate sponsors have been notably quiet about the segment, but private conversations suggest some concern about being associated with Roman's increasingly controversial image and the negative fan reaction to his protected status and entitled behavior. The timing of this confrontation just before Clash in Paris has created additional pressure on WWE to address the power dynamic between Reed and Roman, especially with international audiences who may be less invested in Roman's manufactured storylines. Backstage sources report that Roman has been increasingly paranoid and defensive since the segment, demanding additional security and expressing concern about other wrestlers following Reed's example by publicly challenging his authority and legitimacy. The psychological impact on Roman of being so thoroughly exposed and embarrassed has been significant according to people close to him, with reports of increased anxiety and anger about his inability to control the narrative around his character and position. Reed's fearless performance has reportedly inspired other wrestlers who have been frustrated with WWE's political hierarchy to consider speaking out about their own experiences with favoritism and manufactured storylines that benefit connected performers over deserving talent. The segment has also highlighted the generational divide within WWE, with older wrestlers who remember earning their positions through merit and competition supporting Reed's stance while younger talent who have grown up in the corporate system remain more cautious. Medical staff have reported that Roman requested additional precautions and security for his upcoming matches, suggesting that Reed's psychological warfare has been effective in getting inside the tribal chief's head and affecting his confidence. The legal implications of Reed's accusations about backstage manipulation and political favoritism could potentially expose WWE to scrutiny about their employment practices and whether they maintain fair competitive opportunities for all their talent. Fan clubs and online communities dedicated to Roman Reigns have been struggling to defend their hero after his pathetic response to Reed's legitimate criticisms, with many members questioning their support for someone who showed such obvious cowardice when challenged. The merchandise sales data following the segment shows a significant spike in Bronson Reed items while Roman's products have seen a noticeable decline, proving that fans are putting their money behind the wrestler who showed real courage and integrity. Training footage from the Performance Center reportedly shows increased intensity from wrestlers who were inspired by Reed's example, with many working harder to prepare for their own potential confrontations with established stars and political favorites. The segment has become required viewing in several wrestling schools and training facilities as an example of how to effectively cut a promo that exposes character flaws and connects with audience frustrations about manufactured storylines and protected performers. International media coverage has been largely favorable to Reed while highlighting the cultural differences in how different markets respond to manufactured versus earned success, potentially affecting WWE's global expansion plans. The psychological warfare that Reed employed against Roman was textbook in its effectiveness, using truth and legitimate grievances to create doubt and insecurity in an opponent who had grown comfortable with unearned respect and artificial dominance. As the fallout from this confrontation continues to develop, it's becoming clear that Bronson Reed has fundamentally altered the power dynamic within WWE by proving that Roman Reigns can be challenged, embarrassed, and exposed when someone has the courage to speak truth to manufactured power. The ripple effects throughout the wrestling industry will be felt for months as other performers consider whether they have the courage to follow Reed's example and challenge the artificial hierarchies and political favoritism that have stifled merit-based competition. Your support for wrestlers like Bronson Reed who are willing to speak truth to power is crucial for encouraging more authentic competition and storytelling that rewards talent and hard work rather than political connections and corporate favoritism. Share this video to spread awareness of Reed's courageous stand against Roman's manufactured dominance, comment with your thoughts on who really won this confrontation, and subscribe to Wrestling News CC for continued coverage of how this develops leading into Clash in Paris. The wrestling community's response to this segment will determine whether we continue accepting manufactured storylines and protected performers or demand authentic competition where the best wrestlers rise to the top based on merit rather than politics.